Thank you for listening to Serves You Right. Now, most of you out there have never tasted mead. I can say that pretty confidently. But today we're talking all about mead. So, for those of you that are not in the know, this is a fermented beverage based on honey. It's the same thing that you hear about Vikings drinking. And yeah, we get to talk to Garrett Freeman of Man Made Mead, one of the largest YouTube mead making channels with over 75,000 subscribers and nearly 6 million views. And we get right into the weeds. I had a lot of fun talking to him about some of his fun flavor combinations. Those include kiwi paprika, and also watermelon habanero sage. So the world of mead is more interesting and deeper than you could ever imagine. So without much further ado, let's get into it and let's talk about all things mead. Thanks for listening. I don't drink a lot of mead, and I think a lot of people that listen probably think of mead as kind of a secondary category. It's not even clear where it lands in the world between wine and beer. Like, what got you into mead? And for the unintroduced, muggle in the audience, what is mead and why do you love it so much?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, what is mead? Mead is a honey-based beverage that, if you do a quick Google of it, it tracks back to Vikings and historical events like that. And, everyone says that the Vikings drank it, and the Bud Light commercial that they ran a couple years ago did that too, and all the things. It's really older than that, but essentially it's honey, water, and yeast. I don't think there's really any concrete evidence of when it was started, but somebody at some point stumbled across a fermented puddle of honey water and decided to drink it, and then figured out what it was. And from there, we started to make it more. Yes, it's associated with Vikings. They would use it often as as they're sailing across the seas. If you have a barrel full of water, not as safe because of bacteria, but if you ferment it, if it's got some alcohol content, then it's going to be safer. So they would often use mead as, honestly, drinking water. As weird as that sounds, it was safer to drink than water.
I mean, just to interject,
and then it became,
there's a reason Prohibition had to happen. Yeah, that's what everyone was doing for years and years.
Yeah. So obviously that circled back in the end, but then people eventually started making it probably less out of necessity and more out of enjoyment. And from there, I think the resurgence of it's really kicked up recently. I don't know the last, if it was big in 1700 or whatever, but as we've come to know more about it, we've grown to make it more than honey, water, and yeast. It's been adapted to be fruited or spiced, and there's a whole host of mead categories that mead could fit into. And essentially anything that you can ferment can be turned into mead. Now, if you do a quick YouTube search, you're going to find some crazy combinations. And I think the new thing on YouTube Meta is to make outlandish things, make a Doritos mead and ferment Mountain Dew and, do stuff that is probably less akin to the origins of it, but it's all still mead if it's honey based. So that's a short history of it. It's a really fun drink. I mean, I really like it.
And the flexibility is unique, I think. I mean, you do get weird spices in beer. I did see an ad for a jalapeno pineapple wine, but I think the range that you get in mead, on your channel, I watched you brew a kiwi and paprika mead, on your Can It Be Mead series, I believe.
Yeah.
So it's and it's weird because I come mostly from a wine background, and part of that wine background is the classic spirits of the world, and part of their methodology and theory is the high-end stuff is the unadulterated, pure. And so it's very weird to see a category where it's no, throw things in here. Let's go. Everything can pass,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fun. I like that it's expansive, but I think the best mead is stuff that is closer to the original stuff, that being what we call a traditional mead, which is honey, water, and yeast. And the cool thing about mead and what got me into it was, one, it's easy to make.
Mm-hmm.
It is so much simpler than beer. in that the process is quicker. You require less equipment. The materials are easier too. It's water, whatever you got at home, generally some wine yeast, and go find some honey. And honey is pretty well available if you are looking around. You can find it locally or online. So I got into it for those reasons. But when I try and promote mead to people and have them try it, especially when we do stuff like pouring events or someone who's just fresh, I say, let's drink a traditional mead to see what it tastes like. Unadulterated,
Mhm.
no fruit, nothing crazy. And what's cool is all the honey varietals in the world make mead more interesting. Lots of people think, oh, I've had honey before. I've had one honey. I've had them all.
The clover honey at the grocery store.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you might have had the bear, the honey bear, and that's
Mhm.
great. Awesome honey, whatever. That's one of hundreds of varietals of honey out there, and we call them monofloral when they come from a single flower source, and then we have polyfloral, which is of course lots of floral sources. Anything that a bee can pollinate on can be turned into honey. Carrot blossom honey comes from the carrot blossoms that the bees have pollinated on. It's vastly different than something like blueberry blossom honey, or the list goes on and on. So that was kind of fun to find out. Also overwhelming because when you're like, oh my gosh, now I have to try 100 honeys. It's like, well, you don't have to, but it's fun to see the differences between them,
Yeah.
if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
No, that does make sense. It's I'm wondering because in my head I haven't brewed meads. My brother is more into it than I am. Would going for like local honey be like the polyvarietal honey? Like if you find like a local honey in a specialty store, yeah,
Mhm.
usually okay.
So a lot of people suggest, well, local honey has they are pollinating on the things that are local to you, of course, which generally means that from what I understand, I'm not an allergenist or whatever the term is for the allergy people,
Mhm.
but they say that it helps your allergies if you eat local honey because
That's
it's
why I know
something
about
about
it.
it. It's a
Yeah.
and there are some honeys that promote a medicinal property. There's one called Manuka, and it's like unbelievably expensive. I did a video one time that was, I think I bought maybe 12 ounces of it, which is maybe like a honey bear size, nothing huge, for $70, something like that. And I made
Jeez.
essentially a half gallon of mead, which turned out to be like 3 or 4 bottles. And I did it for a video, no, just for fun to say, let's make the world's most expensive mead. But a big thing about that honey is that it says it's medicinal.
Mm.
And I don't know. I'm not going to begin to speculate on what's happening there because that's not my territory. But I don't think it's going to cure you of anything in your world if you're eating it.
I mean, the clickbait appeal of this mead will cure your cancer. Just like,
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
yeah, yeah. Now let's talk about the YouTube channel too. So, Man Made Mead. I was impressed looking at it. 75,000 subscribers, almost 6 million
Hmm.
views.
Hmm.
Yeah, all for mead. Something that's like 1% of the like alcohol like production.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the
So
niche of a niche for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. When did you start the YouTube, and did you always know you were going to go heavy on meat, or did it kind of evolve as you were doing it? Or
My origin story with that is kind of funny because I have been brewing for 8 years, and I've been doing YouTube for 8 years, the exact same amount of time.
Mhm.
Because I went out to Texas for my first job when I first graduated from college, and I wanted to brew and do something. I had brewed a couple beers with my brother, and then I was like, maybe I'll get into beer brewing. I started Googling, hey, what do I need to brew beer? And it was like, you need a big pot and all these things.
Mhm.
And I got overwhelmed by the amount of equipment needed. And so what I ended up deciding was like, I'm going to try to find a different route. Stumbled across a couple people talking about mead, and they said you need like a glass carboy or some fermentation vessel, some honey and water and yeast, and you shake it up and you walk away. And I was sold because I was like, that's easy. I can do that. I can figure this out. So in tandem, I decided, well, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to I'm not going to call it a documentary style, but like I'm going to document the process of me learning how to do this. So my very first mead I ever made was also on my channel, made on my channel. And it's me talking to a camera, fumbling over words, trying to figure out what I'm doing, and just being like, I'm making this today, you know. And so I started
We'll
the
see.
YouTube
Yeah.
channel. Yeah, I was like, I don't know how it's going to turn out, but we're going to see. So I started making videos and essentially just recorded every batch. And the first year was honestly just intended to be a documentation of how things had turned out.
Mm.
And it was, just kind of fun for me to do. And then I started to get a couple views. And then I saw people say, hey, like they were following the path along with me and they were curious. And so I kept making them. At some point, it switched when I got confident enough or competent enough in mead making to where I could start to speak on topics and make it
Mm.
more educational. So then I started to switch my videos to today we're doing this and here's why I'm doing this. And I made my channel more educational. And now I've made the total flip, I would say. It's still fun content, that's hopefully fun to watch, but my intent is that my channel takes all aspects of mead making and troubleshoots them, puts them to the test, and lets people learn something from my videos, whether it be a recipe or an A/B style test to see what happens when you do this or this. And yeah, I've been doing it for 8 years. It's just been a slow churn. It's not like you said. Mead is it's a niche of a niche. It's super small.
Yeah.
So I'm not pulling like the Mr. Beast 25 million views, in the first 24 hours. I'm
Sure.
happy if
Sure.
I get a couple hundred to 1,000 on a video, but it's still fun, and I quite enjoy the challenge of it. And surprisingly, even after 500 something videos, I've still yet to run out of content
Oh,
to
sure. Yeah.
produce. So it's kind of
Well,
cool.
I'm sure that you could probably go into any grocery store or even just like specialty grocery store, walk around and like, can it be meat? That's the
Yeah,
whole
yeah,
can it be meat. Yeah. So,
yep.
what's your craziest combination or
Hmm.
so far?
So the one you referenced earlier, the kiwi paprika, came from a series called "Can It Be a Mead?" And I started it like 4 or 5 years ago. I put some ingredients on two wheels, and I essentially let the wheels decide what was going to be made. And so it was a fruit wheel that has all the fruits and options on it, and then one with spices.
Mhm.
In a recent video of one of those, I ended up um, the wheel landed on like spin twice, whatever. And so it was watermelon and lemon for my fruits, and then
Which doesn't sound
it
bad.
also
Yeah.
landed, yeah, which I was like, okay, cool. And then the spice one turned out to be habanero pepper, habanero, and sage. So watermelon, lemon, habanero, sage,
Doesn't
and I was
sound
like,
horrible still. Like the sage is the one question mark, but yeah. I,
yeah,
I could
yeah, and
see a watermelon lemon like habanero, even like salsa. Like that doesn't sound too
mhm,
bad. Yeah.
right. So that's probably the craziest one in that it just was like outlandish, but I have done my fair share of like dumb candy ones. I've fermented Twizzlers. I've done, Sour Patch Kids. I've done
Mhm.
Starburst. Like I've done all those candies just as like a let's see what happens, just kind of fun.
Mhm.
But the most regular weird one is probably that one.
Okay. Watermelon, habanero,
Yeah.
lemon, sage. It could make a good drink. I'm like thinking in my head. So I am more in the wine and spirits and cocktail world, and I've played around with turning different colored candies into like syrups. I find they
Hmm.
always turn like gray. Do you have a
Hmm.
similar-ish problem? Like when you cook them down, or if it's like multicolored, just for some reason,
Yeah.
when you try, like, I guess if it's like Twizzlers would probably turn red, but it's when you
Yeah.
do like kaleidoscopic colors, they usually just default to gray when you melt them down.
I've noticed it. I noticed that with the specifically with like Starburst, when I had done that one, I
Hmm.
had individually unwrapped each color and and did a yellow Starburst and a red, and it started off like in the video, like they were the exact color that was there of the Starburst, and then after fermentation, the pigment was lost, which was kind of interesting. And I've noticed that with other things as well.
Mm.
Like some fruits do that. Dragon fruit is a beautiful purpley pink color, which is just super, super unique. Post fermentation, I don't know what it is. I don't know the science behind it, but it loses a lot of that color and it turns into like a really muted purple, something that's just less appealing in that way. So I don't know what it is, but I've never had
Yeah.
gray. I wouldn't say gray, but I've had
Yeah.
loss of color.
That might be from cooking it and actually trying to make it into a syrup too. Because
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. Fermentation, yeah, no one really knows, I think, everything that happens in fermentation, but I could see like some color aspects muting or changing. Yeah. Cool. I did want to ask you about Mead Stampede. Where did
Hmm.
that start? And that's how me and you actually got to meet each other, and that was super
Yeah.
cool and crazy.
Yeah, it was
I,
wild. It
I
was
think it
fun.
was 432 entrants, if I remember correctly.
So
Or
we had 369 entries
okay.
delivered. Mead Stampede, for anyone who doesn't know, is a mead competition hosted in Oklahoma City. It's one that my buddy BC and I, who runs a YouTube channel called Doing the Most,
Hmm.
um, we started it 5 years ago, and it wasn't our brainchild. It was actually someone from our Discord
Hmm.
who his name is Nick, super nice guy. He was like, "Hey, I would love to like help you guys with this and spearhead this, but I think a mead competition in Oklahoma City would be really cool." And so we kicked off our first year with Nick and a couple people from our community, and we had, I don't know, 120 something entries that year, which was still a significant amount
That's a sizable, yeah.
for a competition. Now year 5, we've gone up to we had 420 something that were um like entered into our system and paid for,
Hmm.
and then we had about 370 that were actually delivered.
Oh, that's where I got the
So
400. Okay, gotcha.
yeah,
Okay.
so we had ended up with, sorry, 370.
Is that a cat,
It's my
dog?
dog.
Or...
He
Oh, yeah.
dog. Yeah, I walked in
This
the
is
room and
probably
made
the
noise.
most important part of the podcast. What kind of dog and what's his name?
This is Boone, and he's a Labradoodle. He's
Great.
about 5 years old, and finally hit his point where he's calmed down enough to not be a psychopath. So it's
I've
kind of good.
I've got a Great Dane Zeus, and if a squirrel goes by, we will hear him in the distance. But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
sorry. So
So we got to 370 this year. It was fantastic. Mead competitions, if you do make one, they're really easy to enter. You just go on whatever website, and there are categories you have to put a mead under. For example, like not all mead is just going to go into a mead category. It might be fruited, so it has to go to a certain thing. It might be fruit and spice. It might have watermelon, all those things, and some sort of element that makes it really crazy. And so you throw it into something called experimental. But
mhm.
essentially, we just divvy out all the categories to where each mead falls into one, and then we gather a bunch of judges and we taste them. We give the people feedback for their brews, and then because it's a competition, we award a first, second, third place, and then a best of show. And it's pretty fun. It's a very prestigious thing to obviously win those awards when you're among 50 people in a category. But
Sure,
it's a,
yeah.
a great event, and it was super fun to meet you there.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's super cool because not everyone can travel in to be present at the competition. So
Hmm.
it was super cool to be there. And, if you've got to imagine everyone sitting in, I think it's 3 bottles. And so if you don't get past that first tasting round, at the end of it, we've got just hundreds of bottles lying around.
Yeah.
And so I actually ended up with a couple of cases that I gave out to a lot of my coworkers at work just to try different
Cool.
things. And so yeah, a lot of people who like, I've never tried mead. I said transparently, I haven't tried these either. So, like, they're either going to
Yeah.
be good or
Yeah.
bad. Like, good luck.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh man, I don't remember if you remember there was a pickle mead that someone entered that I got to try
Hmm.
at the event, and I thought that was
Okay.
a very interesting combination of flavors. I was like trying to think of the nice way to say that.
Yeah,
um,
people like to get ambitious with those things, but
they
I don't
do.
think I tried that one. But I have had them before, and I'm not a big like pickle juice guy. I know a lot of people like to just drink the
Same,
pickle
yeah,
juice. I'm not quite there, so it wasn't as appealing to me. But I could see where people would like that.
yeah. When you're introducing people to meads, do you go more? I think it's called the melomel. You
Hmm.
said you go more traditional, or is there some that you found like the newbie mead drinker really latches onto? Or
So, my buddy BC and I, we do a ton of pouring events,
Mhm.
and like we have one in September we're gonna do, and we often will take a traditional mead for the sake of like when we find the person or someone is walking up, we can kind of gauge where they're at. If they're somebody who's looking to quickly try it and run away, we normally give them something that's going to be fruit and spice, something
Mhm.
to where that kind of hooks them in. If they want to really dive in and figure out what mead is, then we walk them through and say, let's start with a traditional. And, then we'll stair step you to try these other things. It really just depends on like the gauge of the person. Most people tend to like fruit spice meads
Mhm.
more than the traditional ones because it's just how we are. People like fruit things,
Yeah,
So,
I mean, it's
yeah.
because I operate in the wine world, it's like Cabernet. Pretty
Hmm.
much everyone in the world likes a Cabernet. Like it's easy to understand. It's got some tannins, it's got some fruit. Your wine advanced drinkers are going to be the earthy Pinot Noirs, and that's where you're like, okay, this is the range of what we have, kind of
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Yeah. I'm also thinking like beer, maybe like Pilsner would be your like
Hmm.
that's your fruited. Like everyone's going to drink this on a hot day.
Yep.
um, okay. Yeah. Um, I was going to ask you to the back-to-back brewing you did pre and post fermentation. I thought that was really cool for Mead Stampede.
Mm-hmm.
Do you mind talking about that a little bit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in the fermentation process, with anything, there's a stage that we call primary fermentation, which is where, for mead, it's where you've mixed up your honey, your water, your yeast, and your blueberries, let's say, and you've put them all into that first fermentation, and it's going along, it's fermenting, it's doing its thing. That's what we call primary. That's the beginning. The latter half is what we call secondary fermentation, which is where after the primary fermentation is done, you generally need to move the liquid out into a new container to get it off of yeast. Or if there's like blueberries, there's a bunch of blueberries still in there. You want to get it off of that sediment, is what we would call it.
Mhm.
If you add more fruit, add more sugar, that causes the yeast to either re-ferment or it's just an addition in itself. That's called secondary fermentation. So what I did for a test for a video that's still in production is I took 15 different fruits. I bought a ton of fruit and essentially tested how fruit reacted or tasted in primary with a bulk of fermentation on it versus secondary with less fermentation. And I was able to have some bottles at Mead Stampede for people to try. And so people could go along and say, oh, here's an apple mead that had fruit and primary, and taste it and say, oh, I pick up these notes. This is fun. And then alongside try the one that was secondary. And for specifically with that test, the fruit was only incorporated in those steps. So only incorporated in primary fermentation for one and only incorporated in the secondary for the other, which
Mm.
essentially means that half of the batches I made for that test started off as a traditional mead, just honey, water, yeast, until the fermentation was done. And then I added the fruit, and the other half was inverted, essentially.
Cool. I found that I almost exclusively enjoyed the secondary editions of the primary. Do you find that
Hmm.
people have different preferences like that, or is it really just like depends on the fruit kind of thing?
It depends on the fruit. A
Mm.
lot of like at its core, without getting super deep into it because it gets wild. Um, Primary fermentation, when you ferment on fruit, like you'd ferment on wine, on the skins in wine, you're gonna get something that's a lot more tannic. That there's gonna be a lot more tannins presented.
Mm.
You also your yeast choice for wine and mead making make a huge difference. And so when you use the right yeast with the right fruit, those yeast in the fruit, they're jiving together and they're going to spit out the flavor profiles that you want, something that's going to push out more blueberry or push out more whatever in that fermentation process, the primary fermentation. There's less of that happens in the secondary. You get less tannin from your fruit when you put it in secondary. You still get a little bit, but it's less. And you get less of the playing of the yeast with that fruit. So it's more of like, I think of it like it's a juicier profile
Yeah.
for a fruit in that circumstance. And the primary, you're still going to get a juicy blueberry. We're using that a lot, but blueberry taste, but you're going to have more tannin and just a little more playing with the yeast in that circumstance.
And trust me, it's been a couple of weeks, and I think there was alcohol involved. But from what I remember, I feel like the flavor, like if say I was blind tasting these meads, I felt like in most of the primary, I wouldn't have been able to tell you with certainty that like, this was brewed with XYZ fruit. Whereas in the secondary, I got a little bit more of that fruit. Like the fermentation
Yeah.
almost would change the character enough that I was like blind. I don't know if I would have said that was guava, or I forget the exact fruits you used.
Yeah. Well, that's true. Like in fermentation, a lot, as I'm sure lots of people know, a lot of our taste comes from our smell. And so in fermentation, because essentially there's creating of CO2, which is a byproduct of the alcohol that's being created in the yeast and other things, you're blowing out aromas that are important to those fruit. And so there is a little bit of a loss in that regard when you ferment on fruit, especially if you don't use a significant amount of fruit. It's kind of like, the LaCroix idea of like, you waved a lemon around a glass of sparkling water. Like if you
That's about
just
all you
put
got. Yeah.
like, 4 or 5 blueberries into your mead, you're not gonna get a blueberry tasting mead. And so you have to use a significant amount, which often entails 2 to 4 pounds of fruit per gallon for mead making.
Which is a
So
lot. Yeah.
it's significant, and that's for something that's, I'll say, a standard strength brew for what you want to do. If you want to make something that's like, I'm gonna switch fruits. If you want to make something that's like a strawberry bomb that just tastes like you're biting into a strawberry that's huge, you're gonna have to use 12 to 15 pounds of blueberry or strawberries per gallon, which is a psychotic amount, but it just depends on what you're creating.
Yeah. If you're entering a competition, you probably will. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. That is just a ton of strawberry. So
Yeah.
let's imagine the listener out there who's really interested and thinking, okay, I thought about brewing beer. Beer seemed complex. This seems kind of cool. Maybe I'd be into this, but I haven't tried a mead. Are there
Mhm.
any like commercial producers that you really recommend, or for the unintroduced?
Yeah, so here in Oklahoma, we have limited scope of what we can get,
Mm.
and I've been fortunate enough to try lots of things from around because I've been able to travel some. I'm trying to think what's like widely available. There's a company called Meridian Hive that's located in somewhere in Texas. They do a lot of canned session mead, is what we call it. It's lower strength, 6.5% and lower, which I know some people said 6.5. That's still high. That's low for mead. Most mead sits in wine territory for
Oh
people.
yeah. Which, yeah, if you go to
Meridian
Mead
Hive.
Stampede, remember
Mhm.
that. Do not make my
Yeah.
mistake. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's not a lot Mead Stampede, no one's really putting, hey, watch out, this is 17% on it. It's hey, try this, and the next thing you know, you're
No,
blasted. But
I got back to my home and I worked the next day and I told everyone, I think I'm done with drinking. I think I did it
this
and
was the
I'm
straw. Yeah.
fine now. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Um
maybe like find a reputable
mhm.
like bar, maybe a reputable like package store that has a decent selection, and
I
Google the
will
meads. Yeah.
I will suggest there's two that or there's a company I would stay away from. A lot of people try mead for the first time and they try a commercial company that they might not like,
Mm.
and then they give up. And mead's not cheap. I mean, if you're gonna buy a 375 bottle, 750, it might be the same price as going and buying a wine bottle, especially if you're buying from certain producers. So when you get something obviously that's not great, you kind of bail on it. There's a company called Chaucer's that is very out there. I mean, they have a very good scope of product all around the U.S.
Mhm.
If you try it, just know that you might be disappointed. It's not the best, in my opinion. It is very mediocre mead, and it's not worth not buying. But just understand that that's probably not the best thing that you could try.
Sure.
There's a company called Superstition that is a little bit better, in my opinion. They are more expensive. They're located in, I don't remember, New Mexico or something, but they have a good scope of getting bottles out there. If you can just find something at your local store, you'll be able to try stuff. But also, homebrew clubs are super, super fun. And you
Mhm.
don't have to be a homebrewer to go to a homebrew club. Now, eventually they want you to homebrew. I mean, that's kind of the intent of the club, is that you're eventually going to learn how to do this
Yes.
thing. But like my personal club I go to, there are quite a few people I know of that might brew a batch of something a year, and they still come to events and they hang out, they try the homebrew. You might have a mead maker in your midst at a homebrew club that is putting out great stuff, but obviously they're not commercial, so you're never going to try their stuff unless you're able to go and access it. That's probably the best place to try things, is a event like that where you can have people who have access to it or are making it themselves.
Yeah, that's funny. Me and my wife actually went to a how to brew beer class that a homebrew club put on. It was just like
Hmm.
a cheap thing, and then you like you know the whole thing. You boil the water, boil the just like start to finish. But one of the people in the class was a on the side mead brewer, and and so
Hmm.
this the first time I tried mead was at a homebrew and how to brew beer class. So
Yeah,
yeah, so
I
it's
mean
they're out there. Yeah.
it it's still hit or miss on like quality. You might have somebody who's very fresh. Like if I took my first batches to a homebrew club, um, I would feel bad for them knowing now. And so you just have to like temper your expectations that this is still homebrew. This is not a commercial product, but that doesn't mean it's not going to be good. It just might mean you get somebody who's less experienced, or you might have the dude that's been there for 25 years and he's been brewing since, however long, and he's done 100,000 batches and he might be just super good. You just never know.
Yeah. So besides going onto your website and finding all of the things that you recommend for brewing, how would I start brewing today? Like what would you recommend I do?
Yeah. For mead making specifically,
Mhm.
there are lots of mead kits out there. That's really blown up since COVID. A lot of companies have started making mead kits, being something that comes with like a glass carboy, just a big glass jug essentially, and all the equipment you need to start your batch. Um, I would shoot you to a company called Craft Brew, which is they do stuff beyond mead. They do beer, wine, cider, kombucha, but they have a kit that is my buddy actually helped produce and curate. That would be a great starting point for people. And they also have a ton of videos that are in tandem for their kits. So I'm sure you could
Oh,
find
cool.
on that website a mead making kit, and then you could reference a video from Man Made Mead, or a Craft Brew video that talks about their, I don't know, name a mead, and they probably have a video on it as well,
Okay.
so you can start to buy stuff. The thing with mead is most people don't sell in those kits the honey itself, and that's for your benefit. I will say honey's expensive. If you decide to get into the hobby, just know that you're going to have to throw down a little cash for
Mhm.
honey itself. There
Yeah.
is a significant amount of honey needed to make mead, generally between a pound and a half to 3 pounds per gallon, and that's a fair amount of mead. I'm trying to find a reference point.
Oh, sure.
I'm sitting with all this honey in front of me. I'm trying to find a container that, like, this right here is a honey bear. This is a pound and a half honey bear. This
Mm.
probably cost, I don't know, 15-20 bucks, I would say.
For high
And you're
quality
needing
honey.
to buy,
Yeah.
yeah, and you're needing to get double that. So just know that you're going to be biting off a large purchase there, it is definitely in your interest to do research so that you can make a quality batch and not waste your money, and then also just be frustrated if it turns out poor. But Crafter Brew is the company I would say to start like buying a kit from, and then you can buy ingredients separately from that.
Sure. Yeah, and I mean, if you are a wine drinker or beer drinker, if you consider you're not really tacking on mead, you're kind of drinking mead in place of the wine theoretically. So that
Yeah, yeah.
comparable amount, like for a good quality wine, you're probably saving money, honestly. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing is if you want to get like wine, I've started making more wines myself, and it's still expensive to make it, produce it, but like I found a company that sells grape juice, like quality grape juice in like a 5 gallon bucket.
Mhm.
I ferment it myself. It costs like $100 to buy the 5 gallons, but I'm gonna make, what's the math on there, 20 bottles of wine from that.
Mhm.
So it comes out to
25 bucks
like,
a bottle. Yeah. That's
yeah,
not
it's
anything
like
crazy. Yeah.
it's it's cheap comparative to going out and buying all the stuff. Now you do have to learn the craft to make the quality stuff, but
Yeah.
that's part of the fun.
And then that actually kind of goes back to your, caveat there. You don't want to mess it up. Ending up with zero bottles at the end, 500 for bottles is a painful trade if it
Yeah,
gets messed up. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and that's the thing is like you're gonna. I want to be a realist with anyone listening who wants to make mead. You hopefully will make a fantastic batch when you first start. There's also a good chance though things could go south. You mess up a step, something happens, and it doesn't turn out to be exactly what you wanted. Don't let that deter you from trying again. Just because like my first few batches, looking back on them, I because they were like my babies, I started them and I made them as my own little craft. Like I had this special love for them that was like I saw through all the flaws and I was just like it tastes amazing.
Mm.
In hindsight, after I got more experienced, I realized, oh, those weren't actually that great. Like
Yes. No
I
balance.
had
No. Yeah. Yeah.
so it's like good if you love your stuff in the beginning,
Mm.
and the best way to know if your stuff is good is not your opinion. Is to go to somebody in your life who will speak a true thing to say, to try something and be willing to hurt your feelings.
Mm.
If you can have that person who's going to be real with you, then you can grow as a home brewer. But if you hand stuff to your Uncle Bob who just wants to get hammered, he's probably not going to be telling you, "Hey, this needs this,"
This
or
is fundamentally flawed. Yes.
yeah, yeah,
Now, and it's the mistakes that you make too. There's a spectrum, I think, between undrinkable and then I wanted it to be a little different. And like
yeah.
I was even thinking in the competition, one of my brother's meads was a jalapeno lime, and his
Hmm.
big thing was he didn't think the jalapeno came through enough. It was a little lime dominant. It's like
Hmm.
if that's the problem with the batch, like I mean, that was imminently drinkable. That's fine.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
just wanted it to be a little bit more polished or different. Yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely like I think everybody listening, watching has tasted something, whether it be alcoholic or non-alcoholic, that you've gone, "Ooh, this is weird." When it comes to alcohol, there are definitely signs of things being weird. Like in wine, when you get that cardboardy taste, we know it's been oxygenated and it's gone bad in that regard.
There might be some TCA.
Obviously, if
Yeah.
it's like acidic, you're like, oh, so, there's something. Starting to get this vinegar side. Like, oh, this is like you can taste those things pretty comfortably. Obviously, there's a spectrum where it gets really deep, and the sommeliers in the world are able to taste and say, well, that cherry whatever that was used in here added a funky flavor. Like that goes really deep, but at its core, like you can determine if something's flawed or good
Yeah.
for the most part.
For the most part. Yeah. That is actually kind of a cool question. Something I did want to ask you. Have you ever done any like formal tasting things, or have you just developed your palate as you've kind of brewed
Mhm.
and interacted with different brewers?
Um, I Haven't done any like classes or anything official,
Mhm.
I would say. I often just try my own stuff, try stuff from people, just developed my palate through that. And then one cool like video series I like to do with my buddy is we started it like probably 3 or 4 years ago. I called it palate expanders.
Mm.
And I realized that was also after making this series and then Googling things, I was like, this is a terrible name for a brewing thing because all it comes up with is, orthodontist dental things now when you look up palate expanders.
I mean, SEO, but not the right direction. Yeah.
Yes. But
Yeah.
the point of the series is that he would bring a bottle of homebrew, mostly mead, and we would keep it unlabeled. And then I would bring something and we would taste the stuff without telling each other anything about it.
Mhm.
And we'd have determine the fruit, if it's fruited, the spice. Like we would have to find out what it is by tasting.
Mhm.
And profoundly difficult, as we've found. We've done 20 episodes now, and I think I've been right maybe 50%, if that.
Well, I think I
Because
remember
it's so hard.
I saw one where you brewed, I think it was mead with Merlot grapes, and he actually
Hmm.
almost got that one. And, like he was
Hmm.
complaining that he was like couldn't smell or something. And it's like,
Yeah, yeah,
actually,
yeah.
you're almost right.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah.
It's really hard, but like that to me has been the greatest way to grow my palate. It's very
Mm.
hard to do, but it is for anyone who's interested in doing that. Find a buddy, have them go out and buy a bottle of wine of sorts, let's say, or mead if they have that availability, and you buy a bottle of wine or mead or whatever, and then you both pour some. You don't tell each other what you've brought, and you make each other like try and like determine what was given there.
Mhm.
Obviously, if you buy the bottle and you pour it, you're gonna know what you got. So that you have to have a friend. Go drink with a friend is what I'm trying to tell you to do,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah, no, and I mean that is why blind tasting is so big in the wine world. I think it's similar principle. You don't realize how much you bring into it when you know what it is, but when you taste it
Hmm.
blind, it's like to name the fruit without anything else. It's hard. Yeah,
And it's
yeah.
it's hard on the homebrew level, especially when you're the guy who's created it, because there's lots of times I've brought stuff and BC has tasted it, and it was a blackberry and whatever oaked blackberry mead, and he starts saying like, "Wow, this tastes a lot like strawberry." You're like,
Mm,
"Uh oh," like am I off? What did I do here? So, and it could be I've done it where I've got total wrong fruits. I've said, "Hey, this tastes like strawberry," and he's like, "Oh, that's a grape mead." That's and it's like, "Oh, well, apparently I just don't know what I'm doing." So
yeah,
learning that though the hard way is what really has helped me grow the palate.
awesome. Uh, we're coming towards the end of our time. What's in
Hmm.
the future for Man Made Mead? What do you got going on, and what should we be looking out for in the near future?
Yeah, so we've kind of touched on the one of the big videos I've been working on, and that's this primary versus secondary fruit. I'm doing some large tastings, gathering data, and putting together this video that's going to be essentially just an educational way for people to learn sensory wise what has been perceived in 15 different fruits.
Mm,
And so that'll be on the channel. I've converted my channel and decided I wanted it to be more of a tests theory crafting sort of things. So
mm,
like when there are things in the mead world that are untested, for example, that fruit one, I like to put those to the test. So what
mm.
happens when you do this A/B testing? I do have a huge video that I started this year that was I'm sitting in front of me. No one can see them, but I've got 55 different honeys from 55 different locations around the US and outside of the US. I did this wildflower honey test, which was really fun. I brewed essentially a mead, a traditional mead with a wildflower honey from every state. And the end goal here is to do a large scale tasting to see what the taste differences are because every state's going to have different honey,
Do you like
which
Maryland,
will
or
be
are you
fun.
a Virginia guy? Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, like,
cool.
it's going to be arbitrary, like, results because, like, it's still personal preference,
Mm,
but it'll be fun to taste through them. And then I'm going to do a video essentially, um, put them through brackets of sorts and crown a winner, a winning state or location. And I'm
cool.
sending that that person, because most of the honey here was donated to me via some people, I'm gonna send them, whoever the winning state person was, $100 essentially. So
Cool.
they win a prize for this. But the goal of it is just to have a fun video that talks about, here's all these honeys, here's what we noticed. I'm sure that there are flaws in this because, like we said earlier, honey is so expansive, even from, different sides of your town. If you go get wildflower honey from your east side of your town, it's going to taste different from the west side. So this is not an all-encompassing Florida has the best honey in the world, sort of situation.
Yeah.
But that's the other big one. And then I'm just plugging away. I still make lots of recipe videos. If you're interested in specific things, like you really want a blackberry lavender mead, maybe that's something I could arrange to do on my channel. So it's just I'm just putting out new things. That's basically what's happening.
Awesome. Yeah. And for anyone listening and you don't have access to pen and paper or your phone, I will have a link to Garrett's website, and it has links to all these things. I'll also link to the YouTube channel just to make sure you can find it. Yeah. Dude, thanks for taking a little bit of time to talk about mead with me today. Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. I really recommend, if people can, just because it's a different beverage, go look in a not a brew shop. They're not going to be selling that stuff. Liquor store. Go find a homebrew club. Find a way to access mead and give it a shot. Mm-hmm. You might find something you like within it. And then if you're really wanting to dive deeper, making it is very easy. It is super simple. Does cost a little money, but it's like any hobby. You invest some money. The good thing about this one is that you have a byproduct at the end that you can drink.
Yes,
you're not necessarily just throwing away money.
No, and you get a cool community of people that are into this this niche product that is almost forgotten by time, but being resurrected in front of our eyes. So.
Right.
Yeah. And
man.
Then I wanted to say, some point in the podcast, I was surprised and pleasantly happy to find that not all meads are sweet. So just it's worth saying. You hear honey, but it's the same way as like grapes have sugar too. So not all wines are sweet either. Yeah. You do have some sweet meads. Yeah. Just like you have some sweet wines. Yeah.
A bulk of what you'll find commercially is going to be sweet. So if you like drier stuff, you'll have to do a little more searching, but it is the same spectrum as wine. You're going to have your dessert wines, you're going to have your dry stuff. Same thing for mead. You're going to have the whole spectrum.
And the problem with the commercial thing is sugar can hide a lot of flaws. So it's easy to throw some sugar in there and call it a Pinot Grigio, and you're good.
That's the same for mead. There's a lot of stuff that is hiding behind a backswing. Yep.
Awesome. Well, hey, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
Thank you again for listening. That's the end of our show today. My name's Andrew. This is Serves You Right. If you haven't, please subscribe to the show. Everyone who subscribes helps this show grow and get cooler guests on, and it sure does mean a lot to me. We put out new episodes every Tuesday and Thursday. We'll see you then. Thanks.